Hello, all you crypto aficionados. I want to discuss an article that I just recently read on Cointelegraph, and it's saying that maybe $600 billion of latent money might come into crypto with the ETF. Now, I'm not saying there is $600 billion, but it is an important point of discussion because there is X amount of billions of dollars that are coming in with the approval of an ETF. Now, the ETF might come as soon as October 13th because that's when the SEC has to actually decide what to do with the Grayscale lawsuit, either appeal it, find some other BS excuse to deny it, or accept it. The first two options are going to make the SEC look really bad, but since they've already looked really bad in recent months, it may not actually matter for them. So this is like due to some math behind the estimates, and they're saying that it could release $600 billion in new demand into Bitcoin. Now, I think this is a little extreme because $600 billion is obviously more than Bitcoin's current market cap. Even if that came in over the course of the next year or so, it would really skyrocket the price for Bitcoin. So basically, despite some hurdles, market analysts anticipate a potential Bitcoin ETF approval by early 2024. It could actually come as early as this month, but January 2024 is the final day for the ARK ETF, and they can't just delay it past January. They have to accept it or deny it. So a Bitcoin ETF could unlock an estimated $600 billion. Now, I think that's an exaggeration by demand, according to a September report by analysts at Bernstein, more than doubling the approximately $550 billion fully diluted market cap at which Bitcoin stands today. Now, obviously, if you actually inject $600 billion over a short amount of time, it's more than going to double the Bitcoin market cap, because once you break those resistances, it's going to keep going up until someone actually oversells the $600 billion, which would actually be, honestly, not that many people can actually do that. Of course, these predictions are very speculative. And remember, we don't really have that much money in circulation right now in investments altogether. People are putting that money in bonds right now because the market and the economy is very, very much uncertain at this point. But an ETF would give people at least a perceived layer of protection against potential scams and fraud. Although if you're just buying Bitcoin by yourself, you don't really have that. More or less, if you're buying an ETF, you are paying a small commission fee for BlackRock to hold your BTC safely, or whoever's your ETF provider to hold your ETF safely. They have that responsibility to do so, and that might actually attract some people. And remember, if they approve one Bitcoin ETF, they could possibly approve them all. Yes, the SEC has basically delayed all those ETF decisions until early next year, or at least until November. I think until early next year at this point, in January. But that is their final deadline. And January is honestly only about 4 months away. So it's really not that long. And of course, you have the SEC October 13th decision. I think the SEC was kind of banking on the government shutting down to help them block their ETF. But the thing is, the government does not look like it's going to shut down. There's a stopgap. There's basically a stopgap bill for the next 45 days that will actually keep the government funded. So the SEC is not going to get that break if they wanted it. So they will actually have to basically put a plan into motion for October 13th, either risk more humiliation by appealing the lawsuit, which they're going to lose again, or find another BS reason to deny the Bitcoin ETF, maybe based on custody, but Grayscale can just take them to court again, and they'll probably lose that court. Because if you actually look at what the judges said in the Grayscale lawsuit, they basically find zero reason for the SEC to deny a spot ETF because they've actually accepted a futures ETF. They made that very, very clear. And Gary Gensler is drawing more and more criticism, and a bipartisan group of lawmakers is actually against them. So with the court collapsing in on him, with Congress collapsing in on him, the SEC might definitely be forced to take an action that they don't have to take. Because every time they lose a lawsuit, it's basically an egg on the SEC's credibility and an egg on Gary Gensler's face. And I know Gary Gensler is trying to aim for that Secretary of the Treasury position. And by all his failures and all his lost lawsuits, it does not look like he has much chance of getting that position ever. So basically, what I'm saying is there is a decent chance that we do get an ETF this month, a really, really good chance that we get it early in January if the SEC decides to drag this out as long as possible. But the thing is, like, with the $600 billion, I actually don't know how much money there is. Like, the real argument, the real debate is how much money there actually is in terms of like, that will actually come into BTC. You have this chart right here. To better understand the implications of these ETFs, let's delve deeper into the concept of assets under management, or AUM, which represents the total market value of the financial assets an entity or advisor manages on behalf of clients. So BlackRock is 9 trillion, 1% of that is 94 billion, 2% of that is 188 billion. Basically, and like they applied for a spot Bitcoin ETF asset management. Fidelity, the AUM right now has gone down a little bit. It's 3.8 trillion. So 1% of that is 38 billion. 2% of that is 77 billion. Invesco Ltd, 1.5 trillion, 15 billion. So if you just add if you basically just add the 1% of assets under management up, you basically get $149 billion. 2%, you get about $300 billion. So I still think $600 billion, I'm not exactly sure where they're getting that number. They're looking at 4% of AUM. But let's actually just say that like they have 1% of the AUM into crypto. That's still $150 billion in potential Bitcoin and potential money coming into Bitcoin. And the thing is, like, that amount of money, even if they were buying Bitcoin slowly right now, OTC, you would see that effect. And I haven't really seen that effect. And of course, like, this article is projecting that they will actually put more than 1% of their AUM into crypto. I think that's a little bit too speculative. I'm just going to go with 1%. I know BlackRock and Fidelity are hankering to come into crypto because they do see some of the investment potential in crypto, but like I think they might want to come in very slowly. So let's say like 1% over the next year for all of these. Essentially, like, you're getting roughly like 149 billion over a year. You will feel that pressure, man. You will feel that pressure because that's basically way, way more than anyone else has right now. And realistically, that amount of pressure even over a year. I mean, 149 billion a year, you're looking at $12 billion a month. And even like over 30 days, 12 billion, that's hundreds of millions of dollars of Bitcoin by a day in terms of pressure. So we can get excited about that. So investment firms charge, basically as competition in the Bitcoin ETF market intensifies, it may drive down management fees impacting revenue, and it actually may get people to actually buy more Bitcoin as well. So the thing is, like, there's going to be a lot of money generated from these ETFs. They all want to get in on it, and it really depends on consumer demand. But if people are actually looking for an extra layer of security for someone to actually manage their funds while they buy Bitcoin, this is actually the way to do it. And remember, these companies are very much trusted companies in the financial market. BlackRock and Fidelity manages most of the pensions. I think there might be a bill in Congress to prevent them from actually investing in crypto in those pensions and retirement funds. But if people actually want to buy this ETF outright, they will have no choice but to buy some Bitcoin OTC. Now, do I actually think they're buying some Bitcoin OTC? Yes. I do actually think they are buying some Bitcoin slowly OTC, but I don't think they've nearly filled like even $149 billion. And it's very possible that they go with 2% or $300 billion over the course of the next year. So the thing is, there is a lot of incentive for these companies to actually get into crypto. The AUM is huge based on their financial asset holdings. It's all going to be dependent on like how many people are interested in the Bitcoin ETF. But my guess is the demand is pretty huge because they're all pushing for it. If the demand wasn't that big, I don't think all these companies would actually be pushing for an ETF so hard. But you know, like if you have like 9 or 10 of the biggest investment companies all pushing really hard for a Bitcoin ETF, you know that there's actually demand for it. You know their clients have actually asked about it. JP Morgan has even said, and JP Morgan's been pretty anti-crypto from the beginning. They've even said there is a lot of demand from their clients, and that's why they actually released some new products. Obviously, demand is going to be suppressed because the economy is not very good right now. But once Bitcoin goes up, I do believe people will actually FOMO in. And I do think more conservative investors are much more likely to buy the ETF than not. So $600 billion of a tipping point because of an ETF, that definitely might be overplaying it. I mean, I think that is actually overplaying it. But like 100, 200 billion, I think is definitely in the cards, and it may be well worth over that. And even like $200 billion, that's hundreds of millions of buys per day in terms of like, crypto pressure on the upper level. And I don't think there's going to be sell pressure to actually cover all of that from anywhere. So that's why I actually think like there's going to be a buildup leading up to the ETF approval. And definitely like even after the approval, there'll probably be a small sell the news a segment, but then as these companies start to accumulate more Bitcoin to fuel customers' demands, I do think Bitcoin will inch slowly up over 2024. I still think Q4 2023 is going to be very bullish, but I think like the Q1, Q2 2024 is going to be even more bullish because that's basically when the ETF almost has to be accepted, unless Gary Gensler basically denies all these big companies and somehow finds an excuse to deny Grayscale, which I don't think he's going to be able to do. So $600 billion possible according to the article, but my guess is going to be like more than like around 150, $200 billion. But that's still a lot of money. And like, that's $400 or $500 million per day, basically per day over 365 days. So that is a lot of buying pressure. And even if they buy that OTC, they're going to dry up that market pretty fast at that rate of buying. And when they dry up that, they're going to have to like reach into the spot market, and that's going to drive prices up. So I really do see the next bull run being quite large. So that's the news for today. Let me know what you think. Like and subscribe, hit that bell notifications button. Thank you and have a nice day.